People like to get into internet fights, or they don't, nobody likes to, no, some people really like to get into internet fights. Other people inadvertently end up in an internet fight. And the rest of us just try to avoid internet fights entirely. I do that by not engaging. But then sometimes you end up stuck in an internet fight anyway, and unless you're somebody who's just after chaos, usually you end up in an internet fight because you see something wrong and you try to correct it. And then the fight begins one of two ways. Either the person on the other end of this fight is a troll, and they're trolling you, and the trolling has begun, or the person on the other end of this fight, not only do they not like your challenging their opinion, they really didn't like your tone. Even though your tone was fine on your end of the computer, there's nothing wrong with your tone. The person on the other side doesn't agree. They think that there's a lot wrong with your tone. It's gone from just sort of like a debate around ideas to something more personal. Perhaps you think that they are stupid. Do you think I'm stupid? I'll show you who's stupid. They also just might think that you're challenging their idea is in and of itself an attack on them as a human being, which is something I think that they should probably teach better in schools. Debating, perhaps a lost art. I know that young people, there's still debating teams, but it's not like I don't think it's like a regular thing you do in school, debate inside a class. And it's a good skill to be able to argue with somebody without taking it personally. In so many aspects of life, just even on the personal level, with, like relationships with family and friends, romantic relationships, work relationships, man, if you cannot take an argument personally, you are ahead of the game. Anything you want to do in the public eye, you really have to not take anything personally, even if it's supposed to be personal. You can't take it personally, or else you will die. You will just die. I'm a little, that's I think a big reason, one of the many reasons I don't really want to ever be somebody who's an actual elected official, because man, you have to put up with all kinds of shit. And the weirdest part is, like, the scummier you are as a human being, the less it seems to matter what you do or say. And that's just kind of the general rule. Unless you can be one of those, like, unbelievable, like, riding above the fray kind of people who truly does not take anything personally and just has their eyes on the prize. Usually you also need to have like a moral or ethical mission, a moral crusade that you're on. Hopefully one that's going to be a net positive for people as opposed to a real worse than a wash. Yeah, I hope that people get into politics for all kinds of reasons. We know that. And when you actually like meet one of them who genuinely is in it because they want to make things better, like fix things, it's incredible. It's like they truly are like unicorns. And it's a little different from like a highly proficient politician. Because, like, we all know, whatever, the ones that just are kind of, like, filling their chair as often as they're required to, whatever, those guys, I forget how they keep their seat. Oh, yes, bribery. And then there's the other ones that are highly proficient, and they're just really, those people are insane. Those people are machines. They're, like, really good. They, like, respond personally to every single email. They're really good at doling out favors and kind of, like, managing expectations. Like, those are the kind of politicians where, like, if it's an easy fix, like, somebody's got a complaint about parking, and it's literally, like, a $0 fix, but it'll make that person like love and vote for you for life. They're on it. They don't even, it's not even a problem. They've got a system for solving those problems because everybody has those problems. You can just keep solving them. But then there's the ones that are like truly on a mission to save the world. Um, Unbelievable, incredible. How do you get to be that way? And be willing to actually like take on the thankless job of politics. Like if you're not in it for the kind of the kickbacks and the like consultancy gigs and whatever, like if that's not what you're in it for, the fucking like bribes from developers and whatever, all that crap. Um, if you're not in it for that, that job is completely thankless. Like there's, what is there to recommend except for the like rare occasion when you have a huge win, when you finally win, because also for like every person you help, like you've got a genuine soul and like, oh man, my elected representative wrote a letter to my landlord telling him to go fuck himself, and it was incredible. He wrote some kind of angry letter back I haven't even bothered to read because guess what? I've got a letter from the government saying my landlord is an asshole. And it's addressed to my landlord. Like, yeah, you do those little things, and I'm super grateful for that. That's nice. But there's all the stuff that, like, you promised that you were going to make sure that, you know, fucking, I don't know, your child wasn't going to starve to death because of a complex social issue that could just be resolved by the, like, No Child Starve to Death program. And the No Child Starve to Death program, it's been just like sitting in the pile for the past 3 years, and we're coming up to year 4, and people are pissed, and they're just writing you, they're like, I voted for you to so that my child wouldn't starve, and two out of 3 of them are dead. There's only one surviving child, and your piece of legislation has not yet passed. And then as the politician, you've got to explain, you're like, listen, we're not in the majority party. Like, we have no power as a minority party. Anyhow, we don't even have enough people to make that happen. Like, they're a full majority government. And they hate children. Like, they truly would like to see your 3rd child starve to death because their kids are doing fine. And we're still working on it, but we haven't quite managed to get to the point where we can make people care about you and the death of all 3 of your children. And that person whose 3rd child is about to die, they will never vote for you again. They're so angry. They might even like turn to the other party that was actively suppressing the No Children Starving to Death legislation because that party happened to put all their weight behind something that seemed appealing at the time. I don't know, cops. Maybe for some reason this like single mother whose 3 children just starved to death for some reason has got this kind of like power fantasy where like cops will somehow solve things, and then the party that quashed the No Starving Children legislation, they'll get their vote just over the fucking cops or tops. Like they didn't even that party wouldn't even necessarily have to do anything that cost any money around cops. They would just be like, we love cops, and say it enough times, and that's all you need to do, really. But we all know that's a cushy job, being a cop. It's not dangerous. It's not in the top 10. It's not in the top 20. I don't think cop is even in the top 50 of dangerous jobs. Don't quote me on that, though. It might be in the top 50, but it's definitely not in the top 10 or the top 20. Even for injuries, even for like on-the-job injuries, the nurses have it so much worse. Not garbage people, waste disposal technicians. That's terrible to call somebody a garbage person. That's a real insult. That's a bad insult. It is terrible. Don't call anyone a garbage person unless they're truly they have no soul. It's just an empty void filled with garbage, and then you can call them a garbage person. You could do it to their face. You could do it online, but also you would know that in both of those cases, you would need to take that stance of whatever comes back at you after you've put out there just the simple fact that they are, in fact, a garbage person. You have to be able to stand firm and not take anything personally that comes at you, and really be able to kind of like hold back, like carefully think about your response before you put the response out there. Will the response get you the reaction you want? And if the reaction you want is just like more chaos, then you are officially trolling. Which is also fine. I mean, like, do you just want to irritate people and make them angry? Sometimes you do. Sometimes you just want that little man to scream and stamp his feet, and his face turns red, and he goes, "No, no!" And a hole opens up in the earth full of flames, and he disappears, and all of your bushels of gold that you spun from flax are still there, and they're yours now, and you go from being just a poor girl in the village to a princess, a beautiful princess, because you can take your bales and bales of fine gold that you spun, and you can present them to the king, and the king can say, "You're rich now. You're so rich. Please marry my son, the prince, and become a princess and one day the queen, because we had run out of money. We spent it all on that war. And now we're so poor, but you will make us rich with your talent of spinning straw into gold." And you kind of blush and you go, "Tee hee." And is there a goose in this one? Is there a goose? Why not? You brought your goose with you. And the goose lays golden eggs. It's unbelievable. Every day you go to the goose's nest. Like, the goose gets up and it goes waddling around. It's pretty cute. And you go, it's a white goose. And it's pretty big goose too. It's like got a big bill. And you go to its nest, and there you find one or two golden eggs every day. And as it turns out, the king is kind of an asshole, and his son, the prince that you're marrying, despite being very handsome, he's not as bad as his dad. He's just completely adopted his worldview and mentality. So on the days when there's just one egg, they get really huffy, and they kind of look at you like it's your fault. Or even worse, is that suspicion? Do they think you somehow pocketed the second egg? Because listen, this goose is an animal. You can't predict whether it's one or two eggs that day. By the way, this is like, it's a goose that lays golden eggs. You're literally just feeding it some corn, and it pops out. The egg is solid gold is the other crazy thing. Like, even if it was just a shell of gold, it would still be worth so much money. And this egg is solid. It's unbelievable. Like, it's crazy it didn't break the goose, because gold is heavy. And that the goose must have like an iron, what is that called? It's not, whatever the goose has inside that produces the eggs, that is not the same as what mammals have. And I don't know the term for it, but when I'm done talking, I'll look it up. Anyhow, it could be possible to work on the prince and kind of bring him around eventually, but as long as the king is there, it's not what you thought it was going to be. In fact, it's much more difficult, and it's not easy, because it's not just like a romantic relationship. It's not just a family relationship. It's a political relationship. And they also know that you managed to troll that scary little man so badly that he stamped his feet so hard it opened up a hole in the floor and flames swallowed him up. And that's kind of cool, but you don't want them to think you're an actual witch, even though you troll people really hard. You have a pet goose that just pops out golden eggs, and you also have this incredible ability to spin flax into gold. Sometimes it's straw. Maybe you're a little fancy and you demand flax. These are very good skills to have. This is not the kind of witch that you would let go of easily. But you don't want to get chained in a tower or something. That would be terrible. And if you're chained in the tower and forced to keep spinning this stuff, because we also have to remember, it's not like you showed up at the castle of your own free will. You were actually brought there and locked into that room every night to spin the flax into gold. And the little man, was it him who spun the gold in the first place? Oh my God, don't tell anyone. Oh, now we're really fucked. They think you're stealing eggs, which happen to be made out of solid gold. Plus, interestingly enough, there's all this golden bales lying around. Just so much gold. I mean, like, honestly, they could finance 3 wars that would continue for the next 50 years concurrently. And you would still have gold left over. But that doesn't matter, because it's gold lust now. They have gold lust, and that's what you represent. They've realized there's just a pile of gold sitting here. So you've guessed the name of this horrible little man, this troll that stamped himself into the ground, and you've been let out of the room. What if they ask you to start spinning gold again? That's where things could get very, very, very dangerous. And you're going to have to think your way out of that situation. This is where you bite your tongue and you begin to think very, very, very carefully about what your possible next steps could be. What a horrible situation to be trapped in. My God. I mean, you do have a certain amount of agency at this point, and that's really important to remember. It's not like you're trapped in a tower and your hair just keeps growing and your only agency consists of like braiding it, throwing it out the window, and trusting that like the guy who climbs up is not going to be a problem. Or at least a worse problem than your current situation of is it a witch? Is it a stepmother? Is it your actual mother? Is it your like dad? Whoever's locked you up in that tower there. That's a bad situation to be trapped up there with nothing to do but grow your hair. But you also have to be careful about what's waiting at the bottom of the tower to climb up. And how do you get down? I don't remember how they get down. Like, does he murder the person who's been keeping you in the tower? And that would leave you with extremely complicated feelings, I think, at the end of all of this, because you're now with this person who you don't really know. I mean, this is just a person who is screaming at you from, not even screaming, just kind of outside the tower. Who noticed who first? We don't know. But now the person who was keeping you in the tower is dead. And it doesn't matter whether you're a blood relation or not. There's that kind of like weird parental power dynamic where they also were, you could have been convinced that they were somehow protecting you by locking you in that tower. So you've got this very conflicting feeling where this protector figure has been murdered by a new protector figure. But in both cases, it's very frightening. Very frightening situation if you look at it from that perspective of like, this is a big unknown. However, the good thing is you are actually in the palace surrounded by bales of gold. There's a goose with golden eggs. There's no beanstalk. That's for kids. I don't know if you knew that. But the beanstalks are for kids. Beanstalks are very nice, you plant a bean. But the thing about the goose with the golden eggs is you don't have to do much at all. You just feed it corn. Geese they're assholes. I'm sure that there is like a really sweet, gentle breed out there. There's a geese with the golden egg. It's not the most beautiful goose you've ever seen, although it is all white with one of those nice like orange bills. It's almost like a duck, but it's huge. And And you just feed it. It lays the eggs. You're not cuddling with this goose, but you don't need to. It's kind of a cool pet. It is a cool pet. It's just like a very striking situation, especially if, oh my goodness, what if I wear a white dress every day just to match it? A fresh white dress every day. Now that you're in the castle, you got girls who used to be just like, girls who you used to be just like. They wash your clothes, they iron them, they maybe will like scatter some nice, I don't know, some kind of like fragrant water on it. And they dress you is the craziest part. It's like these other girls, they're kind of your friends. They're like your entourage. But the difference is you pay all their bills. And in exchange, they just take care of your laundry and they dress you. Cook is something different. The cook is kind of managed by the king, honestly, just because he's like he likes to be in charge of everything. But that's fine. I mean, he chose a good cook, totally more than serviceable. But it really is something to go from being just a normal person who just, spins flax into like linen, beautiful linen, to now having like all these other, like these women who their job is to like, I mean, so recently was it that you were spinning flax into simply linen that the garment you are wearing is made out of the very linen you had yourself spun. It's incredible. It's chills. It's actually sometimes, just sitting at the table in the morning, drinking a hot beverage, looking out at the sun rising over the garden, and the garment is very nice. You spin fine linen. You were not. This wasn't just like a really crummy cottage industry. Like you really, truly were. Like highly skilled at spinning linen, the whole community, all the women in the community. But you know that this was your lot of linen and you're wearing it because it was the finest linen. You're not going to wear a gold garment. That's extremely expensive. But the women in your entourage are the finest embroiderers. And they've embroidered beautiful designs in gold at the sleeve and at the hem and at the collar. Just incredible, so inventive. Some of them are these very sort of like just beautiful abstract patterns, and others are so charming. They have these little tiny animals in them, and sometimes you can see a lady feeding a goose, and it's so touching. It's so touching because they're not doing that because anybody's forcing them to. They enjoy it and they love to, and the little lady and the goose, like, that's for me. That was for me. And it's only once. It's on the hem of my right sleeve, and I'll just be doing something with my hand and I'll notice it and I'll smile. And nobody will know why I'm smiling except for me and the woman who embroidered it, because she's around pretty much all the time, except when I was locked in that room spinning gold. But I wasn't wearing fancy things at that point. I was still just a regular person. Sometimes it's nice to be a regular person, because the funny thing is that even though it's embroidered in gold now, if it was just me and my friends at home making things for ourselves, we don't get the finest linen when we're at home, but we do such a good job that even the lower grade is still wonderful. And maybe when we have time, we embroider things for each other, and my friend would do that for me anyway, but maybe just in, a brown thread or something. No gold, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at all. The brown thread it has more contrast with this linen. Whereas the gold, it does have that kind of like ephemeral thing, the sparkle and the shimmer. That's the thing about gold and precious stones and stuff like that. It's the kind of ethereal quality that they have, that they lend to the wearer. I heard only recently, apparently the reason that women wear pearls and multiple strands of pearls is that if they're real pearls, they diffuse the light. So it's kind of like ideal for selfies. It's just like a very flattering cast of light, and especially if you have pearls going like all the way, just like rows and rows and rows of pearls, you've essentially created this like beautiful reflected diffuse light illuminating your face. How lovely. How lovely it must be to see a lady like that come into a room. If she's pleasant and has a good demeanor and a good attitude, how lovely. But I could also see it being somebody very hard, like a wicked Disney villainess with her rows and rows and rows of pearls, and it doesn't matter how beautiful the diffuse light is, you can see see, cunning. Why is cunning the first word when I'm thinking of like an evil woman? That's terrible. It's not feminist, first of all, to associate cunning with an evil woman. Although I guess cunning could also be associated with an evil man. At the same time, an evil person could also be stupid, utterly stupid. You don't need to be cunning to be evil. Cunning, is it the same as intelligence? Cunning is a type of intelligence. I'm trying to think of a more positive. Wisdom would be the other side of that. Yes. Yes. Cunning and wisdom are both types of intelligence, but they're applied quite differently. And I'm sure there must be some wisdom in cunning. If it's somebody who's had enough experience to become wise in their cunning. And it could go the other way too. Why not? I mean, like, you could be cunning and not plotting evil for good people. You could be cunning and your plots could be to do good. Was Robin Hood cunning? I don't know. But it is always appealing to think of oneself being some kind of guerrilla cell in the forest fighting for justice. It's nice to think about it, but the reality was a bit different. Women had to like drown their babies to death so that the opposing army wouldn't hear it crying. People saw their friends blown up in front of them. Oh, this got so sad. This got so sad right now. Anyhow, it's always great to fancy oneself a partisan, but sometimes people are forced into it by circumstances beyond their control. And when it's choice, it's romantic. But when you don't have a choice, it's a tragedy. Stream of consciousness.